What's up, everybody?
Hey,
Hey,
how's it going? For some reason, it didn't put me in the countdown. So, I just saw y'all, muted sitting there. So, I had no idea the countdown was going on. That was cool.
Oh, there's like a little kid just like off to the side, like in timeout. Like,
You know that, SpongeBob caveman meme? That was me.
Yeah, that too.
But, yeah. So, we're here. Week, it's kind of a dead week. It's in between the Super Bowl and, the NFC and AFC championship games. But we still got a lot of football to talk about. Joe, I know you're really excited. So you wanna give us the rundown on all the latest noted Washington fan here as well.
Yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Obviously Tyler actually has a Redskins jersey on. I have a Redskins jersey on.
Washington football team. Sorry.
Oh yeah, okay. I have a Washington Redskins jersey on. He's got a Washington football team jersey on. But this week, the Washington team finally announced their team name, which was a name that we all expected it to be. Ended up being the Commanders. They did a lot of they tried to do a lot of smoke screens, but it didn't work out too well. Everybody knew what it was and it got leaked early. But I like the team name. I personally think that the Washington Redskins apparel was super outdated and needed a change. Obviously, I didn't want the change to come this way, forcibly, but I'll take it. And I like their new apparel, I like their colors, what they have going on. And so I'm finally able to. I haven't bought a jersey yet, but I'm planning on buying a T-shirt and buying a black jersey at some point. So I'm in favor of it. I never understood why people were complaining about it. I mean, I get either way. Not everyone's gonna like it, but there were people that were acting actually hurt about it. It just doesn't make sense to me. But wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that before I dive into the negative Washington news.
Yeah, I like their jerseys. I mean, I kind of like the rebranding. It's not super different, right? It's Washington enough, but it's different enough that you can tell it's not a Redskins or a football team. And I liked it. I do think Commanders is kind of like a bland, you're playing a football game and they randomly generate a team name for an expansion team. But it's not an awful name, and there's worse names. And us Washington fans got to support our team no matter what, right? So
yeah, and I mean, obviously, I would have liked a little bit more excitement. The W on the helmet's a little boring, but I think they tried to do some of the other names that fans were interested in, like Red Wolves, and ran into some issues with that. So they took a safer approach and went with the Commanders because it's a good, strong name. And, DC has a lot of military families that are fans of the team. And so I think that was a good play on their part. But yeah, Clack, what do you think?
I mean, I love the uniforms, especially the black ones. Be a great alternate. I really like the uniforms, but I think the team name, I think they could have thought it through a little bit more. I don't think Commanders would have been my first choice. Personally, my first choice would have been Senators or Generals. Would have been my first choice. But I mean, not a bad name, not the best, but I mean, I guess it is what it is. But uniforms are decent. Would definitely looking forward to probably getting one of the Bama guys' jerseys once free agency and all is over. We know who's going to be where. So yeah, well, I could probably, not saying much, probably the best uniforms in the NFC East. But
yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, there are worse uniforms and there are worse team names. I mean, you've got the Cleveland Browns. So
that was named after their first owner.
I know, but it's super lame. So I don't think Washington has the worst name. I don't think they have the best name. Last thing on that, the only question I had was why they did the white gradient field jerseys with the burgundy helmets. It didn't really match, but we've seen teams like the Rams and some other teams move towards the gradient field jerseys. So I'm okay with that, and I think it'll actually look a lot better in HD or on the field during the game than it will right now, and we'll get used to it eventually.
I do have a question, Joe. I want to see what y'all think. This kind of going a little bit off topic, but staying on topic in a way. You look at teams like Tampa, LA, the Rams. Some teams they would wear their white jerseys at home. Do you think that's something y'all do, like wear the white jerseys at home some, and then do you think they kind of do some of that, or is it going to be, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Washington does that?
I think they'll stick to the burgundy at home just because it's, it's what everybody knows. It's what the fans love. But I do think, it's a good question. I wouldn't hate to see that, but also I know they're going to try and stick to the tradition that they have still intact. Obviously, some of it was removed, but the burgundy at home, I think, is what they'll continue to do.
Honestly,
sorry. Go ahead.
This kind of goes into really quickly. We'll go into our next topic. But honestly, at this point, do you just say to heck with tradition and change things up, especially when, and what we're fixing to talk about next, like tradition seems very murky there in Washington. At some point, do you just change tradition up and do a little bit different?
We'll dive into that with our next topic, but I will say that aside from a couple of things that will be discussed, I like the direction they're moving in with the new team name, new jerseys. Allegedly, they're trying to build a new stadium. I know the mayor of DC said that she wanted the stadium in DC, and that's something that I'm very passionate about because going to Landover, Maryland to watch the Redskins, watch the Washington Commanders play is just not a fun environment, and the stadium's been needed to be upgraded for a while. But also, so you've got a new stadium, you've got a new coach with Ron Rivera. I think Ron Rivera does a great job. A new team name, and then you're presumably hoping to get a quarterback of some sort. Don't know if that's through the draft or through free agency. So I like the direction they're moving in. But one thing that still has not been fixed for the team, which I will say forever, that it'll continue to be a dumpster fire organization, is that their owner is still Daniel Snyder. And I'm sure you guys saw this Daniel Snyder stuff that we thought was swept under the rug, but has kind of been brought to light because the House committee had a hearing about Daniel Snyder and a lot of misconduct that went on within the organization. And a lot of those people were removed. And this is from a while ago, but I saw that during the hearing, there were a lot of people that came out and said that Daniel Snyder had, touched them inappropriately or made inappropriate comments. And I don't have all the names of the women, but they asked them, they said, how many times have you been sexually harassed while working for the Washington football team? And Mulaney Coburn said more than 200 times. Tiffany Johnson said between 50 and 100 times. Anna Nunez said over 100 times. Emily Applegate said 515 times. And then Rachel Ingleson said 500 times, multiple by 8. So a lot. And then I listened to DC Sports Radio, I listened to an audio snippet from one of the women, Emily Applegate, who said that Snyder was like inappropriately touching her under the table at like a Washington function and tried to get her to come into his car with him or his limo after the function. So it's absolutely disgusting to me. And it's ridiculous that the NFL continues to, be like, oh, this is not a big deal. And they actually said that they can't do anything and that it's up to Dan Snyder to release the findings of the Beth Wilkinson reports, who they basically just paid Beth Wilkinson off. So it really pisses me off. And I kind of wonder how long this is going to slide for. I mean, obviously they say that they're trying to make a difference, but we've seen with the Brian Flores situation that they're talking a lot, but they're not actually doing much. And it's the same thing, unfortunately, with the Beth Wilkinson, Washington stuff. And I that's all I have to really say about it. It's really infuriating to me.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that, like, I mean, if you have any question over who the NFL is trying to protect, they're protecting the owners. Like, they're siding with Dan Snyder, which is just an awful look. But, you know, at the end of the day, everything's about money, right? You follow where the money is, and it kind of sucks that he's going to probably get away with a lot of this because he's rich. And, like, I just don't understand how, after some of the stuff that, like, has caused owners to get in trouble, right? Like, you look at, like, the NBA, for example, right? The old Houston Rockets owner, I can't remember his name. He was forced to sell the team
Daryl
because
Morley.
Wait, who'd you say?
Morley. It was Daryl Morley, I believe. I think he was like a GM or
Daryl.
something.
Yeah.
No, not Daryl Morey. The one before that. But anyway, so he, like, was forced to sell the team because it came out he was saying, like, a bunch of racially inappropriate stuff.
You're thinking Clippers owner Donald Sterling.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Clippers owner. Sorry. But he got caught in, like, talking about his private pool or something, and said some racist comments, and was forced to, you know, sell the team, which, you know, great. But also, I feel like this is even more severe than that. And but it's just different leagues, right? Like, the NFL is gonna let something of this magnitude, people getting sexually harassed 500 plus times working for the organization, they're just going to let Dan Snyder probably get off scot-free. And then, I mean, you look at, like, the last time they went into investigation on Dan Snyder, right? Like, the last time they were about to dig something up, they released the John Gruden emails, and then Gruden was the fall guy.
Yeah.
And something like that is undoubtedly going to happen again, because the NFL just decides to protect, you know, the billionaires running the team over the well-being and, like, health and safety of all of their employees, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm not going to read the whole statement, but part of the statement Dan Snyder released said, I unequivocally deny having participated in any such conduct at any time with respect to any person. Tanya and I will not be distracted by those with a contrary agenda for continuing with the positive personnel cultural changes that have been made at the team over the past 18 months and those that we continue to make both on and off the field, which basically says, hey, we don't need to worry about the past and all this horrible things that I've done because we're moving towards the new culture. Like, yeah, those people, most of them have been removed from Washington, but what is it? You have to cut off the head of the snake before,
or just keep growing back. Yeah.
And Dan Snyder is the head. He's the owner of the team. He's the head of the snake, and we'll continue to have these issues, and they'll continue to get swept under the rug because Dan Snyder is one of the NFL's good old boys. And even before all of this, people, I mean, it's not like Dan Snyder's had a reputation for being this awesome human being and a great owner. He's always had a reputation for being a dick and not a great owner, and just this petty guy. And I don't, it makes me so mad, and I'm trying not to go on a tangent and use colorful language about it, but it's just, it's real tough, because how can you say that you're really changing as an organization if you still have this man as your owner?
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the whole Deshaun Watson situation, right? Which is still ongoing, by the way. But one or two people, like, you don't want to say, oh, they're lying, right? You always want to investigate that, but that could potentially be, you know, something. But when it's as many people come forward and said, and all had similar stories, all had similar allegations and stuff, you can't cover that up. Like, that's too many people that have been abused and, like, objectified, and you can't just sweep that under the rug as well as they're going to try to. And the sad thing to me, like I said, is in my mind, this all ends with a bunch of people getting paid off, and Dan Snyder's still the owner of the Washington Commandos. And so, or Commanders, excuse me. And as a Commandos, I think you said it earlier. But it's just infuriating as a fan of the sport and as a fan of, you know, basic human decency, that this man is going to be able to keep his job, most likely, after everything that he's done, after everything that he's going through. And maybe, you know, even if he didn't directly do it, which, like you said, there were cases of people alleging that he did directly do stuff. A lot of it was stuff that he knew about and allowed to happen on his watch, right? Like, that's just something so company-wide that you don't just go, oh, I didn't know it was happening. And it's just
It was swept. We saw it get swept under the rug and kind of pushed aside because they used the excuse that a lot of the people weren't there anymore. But now that these women are coming forward and actually saying that Dan Snyder personally was involved in it, gives me hope that something will be done and that he'll be forced to sell the team or just flat out they'll get rid of him. But also, common theme about the NFL being a good old boys club, I just don't think that's really going to happen.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have breaking news. As we are on, Miami has made a coaching hire.
Okay.
This was not something we planned to talk about. Miami has hired Mike McDaniel, San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator, per
Good
Adam
move.
Schefter. So take it with a grain of salt, but I feel that's probably true. So Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins with Tua, Devontae Parker. There's that. Going to be interesting to see how that works.
First minority hire too. After the Brian Flores thing, people were preaching minority hires. You might not tell. A reporter posted a article after like the whole like who Mike Jones thing came out, calling him like another white boy. He's actually, half black. So he's the first minority head coach.
Mike McDaniels is?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so he's the first minority head coach hired. The San Francisco 49ers get 2, I think, third-round picks because they had a minority coordinator poach for a head coaching position. That's like one of the rules that they have now. And yeah, because it was between him and Kellen Moore. And it's basically been reported for the last week or so that was going to be a done deal. He apparently wowed them in his first interview, and they really liked what he had in store for Tua, apparently, like especially. He talked about how he was going to maximize Tua's value. So I'm excited to have a head coach that seems to be excited to use Tua instead of one that actively doesn't want him in the building. And, it's whether or not Brian Flores should have been fired. That's a whole other can of worms. I mean, maybe, but it is exciting for Tua if you're an Alabama fan, like a lot of us are, that you'll have a guy that actually seems to want to work with him and maybe use him to his strengths instead of,
I think it's a great hire. Anytime you can hire these young he's offensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Anytime you can hire these young offensive-minded coaches, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think they made the right choice to hire him over Kellen Moore because still, the jury's still out on Kellen Moore. But I do think that's a good hire for them, and there's only a couple more vacancies left to fill, so we'll see what happens with those ones.
Yep, so the Saints and the Texans. We didn't even get to talk about my boy, too. My boy, Kevin O'Connell. That whole thing happened this last week, too. The Jim Harbaugh interview.
Did happen.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. If you guys want to move on, though, we can. I can save it for a different day. So the Senior Bowl was yesterday, right? And I didn't get to watch. I was at work. The national team won 20-10. There was a lot of quarterbacks that were getting, a lot of hype in this game. So let's go down the list. Malik Willis, he was, he had a 27-yard run, and he was kind of quick to scramble from what I heard. That was like the big knock on him is he was taking off almost every play. And his throwing was not great. 2 for 4 for 11 yards, but then he also had 4 runs for 54 yards. And he's, in my opinion, I think we should just go quarterback by quarterback and talk about them a little bit. So Malik Willis, in my opinion, is the biggest like boomer bust guy. He's either going to be out of the league in like 3 years, or he's going to be a star quarterback if he develops well. And I think it's all just about getting him the right staff that can develop him, right? If he goes to a bad situation where he has to start year 1 and is thrown to the wolves, I don't think he's going to pan out. But he's going to get drafted pretty high, in my opinion, like higher than some people are going to think, just because he's this year's like Josh Allen or this year's, Trey Lance, where they have all the traits to be really good. They just got to put it together.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's the most boomer bust prospect. I think because of all the potential that he has, he'll likely be the first quarterback taken. I do believe that now because he had a great week at the Senior Bowl, and even though he's quick to run, he also makes a lot of big plays. and that's always something teams are looking for, a guy who can have that potential. And then obviously some of the other guys, you had Sam Howell, who had a good week, didn't get a bunch of super hype around him, but was 6 for 9, 67 yards, rushed for 29 yards and had a touchdown. And then Desmond Ridder, I've been really critical of him. He had a pretty good game, 4 for 6, 68, and 2 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett, 6 for 6, 89, and a touchdown. But one of the things I saw from reports was that he did struggle early on in the week throwing in inclement weather. Yeah. And, the question with him is an NFL question for quarterbacks for a while. Is I guess his hands, I don't have official measurements, but he has smaller than average NFL hands. But also a lot of guys like Kyler Murray and there's one other quarterback,
Joe Burrow.
Burrow have smaller hand size too. So,
except
really nitpicking at that point.
Kenny Pickett's hands are like over half an inch shorter than Joe Burrow, who was already like a huge story that his hands are so small. So his hands are a little tiny, got little tiny
little baby hands. And then obviously one of the top quarterbacks, Matt Corral, who suffered an ankle injury in the Sugar Bowl, decided he wasn't going to do the Senior Bowl. And so we have all these go ahead.
I was just wondering, he's a redshirt junior technically, so could he go to the Senior Bowl?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know how that worked because I was looking that up and I was like, I know.
If you're junior and declare, you can go. There was a couple of guys who had done that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think because of the injury, he decided he was just going to rest, which is a smart move. But, obviously you got Willis, Howell, Ridder, Pickett, Corral. This is supposedly not a great quarterback draft, but how would you guys, I guess we'll start with Tyler. How would you rank this year's quarterback prospects, like 1 through 5, in your opinion?
So I have one qualifier real quick I was wondering about. Do you mean ranking them as quarterbacks right now or ranking them potential-wise for how good I think they will be?
The most pro-ready.
Okay, so pro-ready. I'm actually going to drop Desmond Ridder out of here. Get out of here, Desmond Ridder. I'm putting Carson Strong in there over him, but not at 1. But all right, Kenny Pickett's probably my 1. He's the best. He's going to be the only one I think that would be like a plug and play day one. Whether or not he's going to be a star, he's kind of similar to Teddy Bridgewater, I think, in that he's accurate and can move when he needs to, but he doesn't have great arms, and he's a pretty good. He's a smart guy. He can read the defense pretty well. I think Kenny Pickett's the highest floor of the quarterbacks. Pro ready, I will actually go Sam Howell, number 2. Kind of controversial, but he had an off year, but he also lost a lot of the talent around him this last year, and he kind of was playing with some not great supporting cast. And I think that he has a decent arm. He's more mobile than people think of. But I swear, watching North Carolina, he would have 10 rush attempts a game. He loves to run. Matt Corral, I'll probably put at 3. I've talked about it before the show, but the only thing with Matt Corral that worries me is he has the athleticism and he has that it factor around him where he's a winning quarterback, but he played in an RPO style offense, which is kind of scary to me because it's a one read and then either throw it or run it type thing. And I don't know, that doesn't always translate well.
It did for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying
right.
It is a hard.
Well, he also went to Kansas City with Eric Reed and or not Eric Reed, Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, and then I'll put Carson Strong at 4 for pro ready, just because he has the great arm that you need. But the big question for him is his injury history. Obviously, he might be the best pure thrower of everyone, but he is negative mobile. He is just a literal statue in the pocket.
Yeah,
and he has 2 big knee injuries that scares me a lot. And then Malik Willis. If this is just purely based on potential, Malik Willis is my number 1. But if we're going pro readiness, he's my number 5. sometimes struggles on like the medium and short throws, but he has a cannon for an arm and like great legs. He's a little bit too quick to take off. Whereas like you look at Sam Howell runs when he has to, but Willis is like run first type guy. And we talked about it earlier. He's an electric playmaker with the ball. I think I saw a tweet saying he's like the most electric ball carrier in the draft class, which might not be wrong, but he's got to learn, basically redo all his mechanics, redo how to learn the defense from the ground up. But if he can do all that, he'll be good.
Well, I guess it's my turn now.
Yes, sir.
I think me and Tyler have the same list, but completely different order. And I told y'all
we have the same
have the
list,
same
but
players
the
on
order
the
is
list.
completely different.
Same players, and same players. Anyway,
we all have the same players, Clack. We're all making.
No.
the same
I
list,
subbed.
just
And
different
to be
order.
fair, I did sub Carson Strong for Desmond Ridder. So
I'm doing the same thing.
well,
okay, get out of here, Desmond Ridder.
I do have Desmond Ridder in mind as my number 5. He's not a bad quarterback, but I just don't think he's pro ready. Nothing he showed me. Like I was I watched most of I was doing some work around my house, so I was watching the senior, like the practices and
Doing
everything.
some sweeping and vacuuming.
Anyway, no, I was putting up a lot. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So Desmond Ridder did not look good at all to me. But he did look better than the guy I don't have in my list, which is Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to be a bust. I think he's going to could be the first one to go, maybe, but I think he's also going to be the biggest bust. I think he's going to be another Jamarcus Russell type bust. That's just
wow.
a hot take, but I'm going to go on.
You think he doesn't like Jamarcus Russell was a bust for a completely different reason than Kenny Pickett would be?
Not for those reasons, but I think he's going to be a bust and that he plays about the same amount of time Jamarcus Russell does. And then, I just think it's going to be one of those.
Hot take.
He'll be, by year 2 or 3, he'll be the second or third string quarterback. That's a hot take, but anyway. My number 4 is Sam Howell. I think, Sam Howell, if you'd asked me this before the season started, I would have had Sam Howell number 1 easily. But, Sam Howell did not have a good season. I don't know if it was Mac Brown or if it was coaching. I don't know what it was. But, Sam Howell's season was not what I expected out of him. Number 3, he could go 3 or 5. Anywhere in this is Malik Willis. Malik Willis has got potential, but he, like you said, like Tyler said, he's too fast to run. He's a run-first quarterback, and I just don't think that's going to work. He's going to have to learn to stay back in the pocket, be patient, and pass the ball to his receivers. And I'm going to go number 2. I'm going to go my number 1 first. I'm going to go on a limb here with my number 1, and I'm going to go Carson Strong at number 1. I just, we talked about, in a previous show that sometimes there's that one quarterback that you're not too high on that ends up being the best quarterback in the draft. And I think that's going to happen here. Yeah, I know he's had some injuries, but I don't think Tyler said he is kind of like a statue back in the pocket. I don't think that's going to hurt him because
he's got cement blocks for feet.
And
if you're going to use Tom Brady as an example, the NFL has changed a lot. Tom Brady has had to evolve.
I agree, but the future NFL Rookie of the Year is the same way. Mike Jones is a statue in the pocket for the most part.
Who?
Mike Jones.
You said Mike Jones.
I did not say Blake Jones.
You said Mike
Jones.
I said Mac Jones.
Clack, please lay off the alcohol before the show, man. You need help.
Alcohol. Y'all can't hear. Mac Jones.
You said Mike. We both heard it.
Y'all can't hear it.
Anyway, keep going.
God bless him.
Anyway, I think Carson Strong's going to make a strong, no pun intended.
Clack, I swear to God, I'm about to just.
I did not mean to do that. Carson Strong is going to make a strong case to be a starter day 1.
Well, they don't call him Carson Week or Carson Wentz, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope not. Depending on where he goes, he can wind up in Minnesota or Washington, and he's most likely depending on what happens with Kirk Cousins. He could be a starter day 1 or most definitely by year 2 he's going to be starting. I think Sam can be said with 3, 5, or at least 3 of these quarterbacks in our list at some point are going to be starting very soon. But I think Carson Strong is my favorite quarterback of this draft class now.
All right.
I wouldn't hate him in Minnesota if he was like a round 2 pick, but if we use number 12 on Carson Strong, I would not be a happy camper.
Well, and before I do my list, that's the thing is my number 1 is the only guy that I would take in the first round. None of these other guys I would take in the first round. I'd be fine with seeing them go in the second, but I don't think any of them besides the guy that I have number 1 should be first round quarterbacks. But unfortunately, everybody's so desperate for a quarterback. We're going to see a lot of these names get driven up closer and closer we get to draft season. I'll start with my number 1 and then I'll go down. I think Matt Corral, just the way he carries himself, the swagger that he has, he's not afraid to lower his shoulder and run through a linebacker, an SEC linebacker. It's not like this is a guy in, FCS or, oh, there's Clack. He accidentally left us. It's not like he's a guy that's going against the best competition. So I think Matt Corral's number 1. Obviously, the ankle injury is a little concerning. Thankfully, you didn't like my Matt Corral's number 1.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Obviously the ankle injury is gonna turn some people off from him, and his name won't get talked about a lot, especially some of these other guys who are actually at the Senior Bowl. But I think he's the number 1. He's got the swagger, the charisma that you'd want in a franchise quarterback. I'd love to have him on my team. The RPO stuff, might concern you a little bit, but I think he's a guy that's smart and has the confidence to figure it out for whatever team he's on. And then my number 2, I've changed this list like multiple times. Even as we're talking, I've changed it. My number 2, Sam Howell. He had a great week at the Senior Bowl. I wouldn't say that he's as accurate as Baker Mayfield, because Baker Mayfield's a comparison that a lot of people use for him, but I think he is more athletic than Mayfield, and has better decision making than Mayfield. So I put him at 2. The production drop off is real tough, but a lot of that is because his top, you have Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, all those guys left this year. So that's why the numbers drop. But this is a guy with Howell that we talked about would be the number 1 pick this year. 2 years ago, people were saying he'd be the number 1 pick. So I think the potential of Howell is there. It's just the production numbers dropped off this year. And then at 3, I'm going to put Malik Willis. I've been hot and cold on Malik Willis the last month. I liked what I saw in the Senior Bowl from him. I think because his offensive line was so bad at Liberty, his instincts are to run when he's in trouble. But I think that's something that a good team like maybe Pittsburgh or one of these other teams that has a great coaching staff, I think that's something that they can fix and get straightened out. I don't think he would do too well on Washington. I think he needs to go to a team that has a reputation for developing quarterbacks well, like a Pittsburgh. And then my number 4 is going to be Kenny Pickett. I'm kind of agree with Clack. I'm not super high on Kenny Pickett because it took him 5 years before he was a great quarterback at Pitt. If you look at his stats his first 4 years there, they were pedestrian numbers. They weren't great at all. So if it takes you 5 years to become a good quarterback, I think that's worrisome. And ACC, which is one of the weaker conferences. But I still think there's potential with Pickett as well, like any of these other guys. And then I'm going to put Carson Strong at 5. I don't even know why I put Desmond Ridder on this. We all just don't really like him. But I'll put Carson Strong at 5. I like the size and I like the arm from him. But cinder block feet worries me. But yeah, that's my list. And I think we'll come to realize closer to the draft that this reputation from this class being not a great quarterback class isn't necessarily true. It might not be as good as we've had in the past, but I still think there's 2 or 3 guys, Corral, Howell, Willis on this list in particular that could end up being solid NFL quarterbacks, a couple
Well,
years down the road.
Something I kind of would like to talk about kind of really quickly, and I know we're a little off schedule, but like you talk about like the turnaround with quarterbacks. Like, I mean, it seems like there's a bigger turnaround amongst quarterbacks before you like really find your right one. Like look at Arizona. They took them 2 or 3 tries to find Kyler Murray. It took Miami a couple tries to find Tua. It seems like the turnaround around amongst quarterbacks is getting bigger, and it seems like it's taking teams longer to find that guy. So, what works for one team, you could draft, Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett doesn't work. Next year, you're drafting another quarterback. What are you like? How important is it to draft the right one so that you're not multiple years in a row wasting a pick on another quarterback?
This might. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say this might be a little controversial, but I like what the Cardinals did. I think quarterback's the most important position in the NFL, right? And if you don't have a good one, you can't really compete. I know the 49ers are an aberration, but like look at the 49ers. As soon as they went down against the Rams, the game was over because Jimmy Garoppolo was not good enough. And you look at all the teams that are like competing, right? Like Matt Stafford is a rare case where they got him in a trade, but he was with one team his whole career. Then you look at, like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Everyone wants the next Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Exactly. They got their guy. Yeah, they had the number 1 overall pick, but they got their guy. And so it's a lot of luck, but I think that drafting a quarterback, one of the biggest thing that kills teams in the NFL is sunk cost fallacy, right? Riding with a guy because you drafted him for a couple more years than you probably should. Like, I mean, you look at, I don't know, the Giants, right? Like, this is now Daniel Jones's third, fourth year, and they're like third year, and they're like, oh, sorry, we ruined the kid. He's fine, but potentially drafting a quarterback that's going to be better than him because they want to give him another year, they might be missing their chance for something like that. Or like the Panthers last year, right? They traded for a guy in Sam Darnold. They were like, oh, we can fix him. And they passed up on like Justin Fields and a lot of potentially really good quarterbacks because they're like, oh, we made these trades and like for this guy and we don't want to, let it go to waste. I think that teams have to be more willing to cut ties with people they draft when you can upgrade, especially at quarterback. So
yeah, I completely agree with you. If you're in a position to pick a generational type quarterback and you have a guy that you kind of like, you got to take the generational type quarterback. And it's an approach that my team, a common theme on this show, I'm always going to find a way to rope my team into this. It's something that they haven't really understood, and they've just tried to use patchwork quarterbacks, and it's bit them in the butt. And this year, I'm hoping they can figure it out. But quarterback's the most important position in case anybody forgot. That's why your Mahomes, your Allens, your Staffords, your Rodgers. That's why your Brady's, like, those are your top quarterbacks in the league. A lot of those guys are in the playoffs for a reason. You don't see Daniel Jones or, some of these other mid-tier quarterbacks in the playoffs. But it's easier said than done. I mean, it's hard. Everybody wants that elite quarterback. Everybody's chasing that. But there's a lot of luck associated with it. And also some of it is scheme and how certain players fit certain offenses.
Yeah, that's one last thing. We should talk about the Super Bowl, but I did want to add this in because I forgot while we're talking about quarterbacks being drafted. But as much as a quarterback being good and like pro ready, just as much of that is what team they get drafted to, right?
Yeah.
A guy might not have a chance. You look at like Trevor Lawrence, for example, generational prospect. He might be labeled like a bust and might be, fighting for his life if they don't turn it around because his first year was basically sabotage playing for the Urban Meyer Jaguars. Mm-hmm. So we should, coming up next week, we have a pretty big game though, and we're not going to be, or at least I'm not going to be here to talk about it. So
we won't be here as a whole this week. That's why this show is going to be a little bit longer today, not to bore everybody, but because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we appreciate whoever's here being here. So thank you.
Don't know who it is, but
yeah, we unfortunately we can't see names. So the Super Bowl, right? We got the Bengals for the first time in 30 something years, and the LA Rams, who was a lot of people's favorites coming into the season, I think myself included. I didn't make a bet on it, but I think I remember one of our early podcasts, I predicted they would win the Super Bowl. But what do you guys think? Like, just quick thoughts. What's your initial take? Who do you think is going to win?
Initial take, and I know we'll get more into this. I think it's going to be a better game. You know, a lot of people kind of think the Rams are the kind of a superior team, but I think it's going to be a really good game. You know, Joe Burrow has proven that no task is too big for him. Contrary to what Gump Twitter says, mad respect to Joe Burrow and the job he's done. And, you know, how about the fact that we've got Zach Taylor versus Sean McVay? Used to be in the same staff together. Now they are coaching against each other Super Bowl. What a matchup we have. I think it's going to be a very, very good football game.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell versus Sean McVay in the NFC Championship next year. Woohoo.
Hopefully for your sake. No, but yeah, this is a lot of great coaches and a lot of great players. And obviously, you know, the Rams, I think overall have a lot more talent and experience than the Bengals, but this is a guy in Joe Burrow that's won at every level. I mean, we've seen him win the Heisman. We've seen him win a national championship. I talked about it earlier with Matt Corral, and why I like him is because the swagger and the charisma, and that's what Joe Burrow has, and I think that's very important in a franchise quarterback. It's not the end-all, be-all, but you want a guy like that to be the face of your organization, and that's why the Bengals are playing in the Super Bowl, is because they have him. They wouldn't be anywhere without him. And so
yeah, honestly, if we're comparing the two, like head-to-head, Stafford and Burrow's in his second year, but I kind of give the edge to him. I mean, Stafford is a bona fide star, right? But especially towards the end of the year, he's been better in the playoffs, but towards the end of the year, he was going like 1-to-1 on picks and touchdowns. And Burrow just – look, all I'm saying is I know it's a worse spot to be in, but Burrow is bringing his team to the Super Bowl in his second season. Matt Stafford made the playoffs like once in his like 10-year Lion career. I get it. Like I said, it's the Lions. It's hard.
He's 34 years old, and you have to think that playing in Detroit for the Lions definitely, you know, broke him down mentally and physically. So
who do y'all think honestly has the advantage at quarterback, if you had to say?
I'm taking Joe Burrow. I mean, I just think that he has it, and, you know, he has this big game experience that, shoot, he has more big game experience than Matt Stafford has, even though Matt Stafford's played a lot more than him, right? Because
I'm going to call it even, just simply because Matt Stafford has been in the league longer. But overall, who is the better quarterback at Joe Burrow? So I guess I would slightly say Cincinnati in that aspect, but Matt Stafford is an experienced quarterback. But it's very close, but I will go slightly Cincinnati.
I think that there's been a lot of unfair criticism for Matt Stafford this year. Coming from Detroit to Los Angeles, the knock on him was he couldn't win the big game. But I think he's had a great year. Like I said, he's about to turn 34 years old, so he's not super young. But I think the experience is good, and it's very important in the Super Bowl. And as great as we've seen Joe Burrow be this year, and he's been down the stretch phenomenal, I think that Stafford has a better game. I think that LA defense forces Burrow to maybe make a couple throws he shouldn't make, but that's not taking anything away from the year that he's had or the player he is overall. I think he's a great quarterback, and probably in the long run will be better than Stafford. But I think right now I'm still giving the edge to the experienced guy, Matt Stafford.
Yeah, see, I was just doing my comparisons like quarterback to quarterback. But if you're factoring in Stafford versus the Bengals defense and Burrow versus the Rams defense, which I guess you should, you make a very fair point in that the Rams defense is a whole heck of a lot better. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that. But yeah, I guess if we're just doing matchups, I could see Burrow having a little bit of trouble, but I'm sticking with my guns. Something tells me Joe Burrow is going to have a big game.
So
that's fair.
What about running backs? You've got Darrell Henderson and Sonny Michel versus, I think, what's going to be more of a one-man show kind of for Cincinnati with Joe Mixon. I mean, they do have some JP Ryan, but I think more so for Cincinnati, it's going to be up to Joe Mixon for the running game against Sonny Michel and Darrell Henderson. Who do you give the running game edge to?
Well, before we get into that, I want to add that Darrell Henderson hasn't played in like a month, so I don't know which Rams team you're watching, but
I mean,
it's
Super Bowl-
Cam Akers and Sonny Michel.
Okay, fair enough.
I think it won't matter too much because I think LA's obviously going to throw the ball more, but I think Mixon's the better running back, and he's kind of quietly been very productive for them this year. And I think Zach Taylor said it best. He's kind of the glue that holds the team together, I think was the quote. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I think Mixon obviously is a better running back, but I think Cam Akers, aside from the fumbling issues that he's had coming off that torn Achilles, has been a boost of energy for the Rams. So I'd give the edge to the Bengals, but I think it's closer than some might think.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of interesting because we talked about it on the previous episode, but like the Bengals are pretty much the only team that went somewhat far, or far in the playoffs that didn't have a running back by committee, right? They were the only one that had like one guy that was the guy that they relied on. But I think that one guy has been more productive than like LA's running backs. Again, that's just by design. That's by scheme. Like they run 11 personnel, so like 3 wide receivers, and they like to throw the ball. They run it like 70 or 80% of the time. So they're not a big like power run team. But I do think in that Joe Mixon's going to offer a little bit more to help the Bengals. But the problem, again, is Joe Mixon hasn't had to run at Aaron Donald and Von Miller all season. So, but I'm going with Mixon as well.
I think 2 is better than 1 in this circumstance. Especially when you're going up against Aaron Donald. I think the fact that the Rams' offensive line has not been good, and I'm sorry, the Bengals' offensive line has not been good, and I think at some point that's gonna come back to bite them.
Yeah,
I think the fact that Aaron Donald, there's no player on that field that wants it more than Aaron Donald, and I think that defensive line, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, is going to be too good. And then you got your corners like Jalen Ramsey. When these short run plays, you're going to bring in Jalen Ramsey and stuff to blitz on blitzes. I think, and then you got 2 running backs if you're LA. I just don't think that Joe Mixon can really get going against a very, very, very good Rams defensive line.
Yeah. So then we have wide receivers, which is kind of interesting because
This is tough.
Yes. Yeah. And so I might get some flack for this. I really, really wanted to say the Bengals, right? Like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. That's a solid core. But with the season that Cooper Kupp's been having, he's just always been open. And then Odell has been emerging as a legitimate, star receiver again since getting traded. I got to go with the Rams.
I mean, one thing before I even make my pick on this one, like Odell was not the problem in Cleveland. Not at all. Odell has been great in Sean McVay's system. I just think with Odell, Higbee, and Cooper Kupp, I think it's just they have the slight advantage. I think the thing with the Bengals that kind of concerns me in this game, and Jamar Chase, obviously was their first round pick. He's gotten most of their targets. I think at some point, the fact that Jamar Chase gets probably 70 to 75% of their targets is going to come back to bite them. And in the end, I think that with Kupp and Beckham, I give them the edge. Especially, Cooper Kupp has been the best receiver in the NFL this season, honestly.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. If you're comparing Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase, I think they're different receivers. I think Jamar Chase has had a phenomenal year, but I definitely would take Cooper Kupp over Jamar Chase. I think overall he's a better receiver. And then Odell versus T. Higgins. I think Odell is out for blood this year, and he's trying to prove that he's proved thus far. He's trying to prove that he wasn't the problem in Cleveland, and that it was Baker, and he just needed to change the scenery, and he's been awesome for them. So those two guys alone, I think, get the job done. And then these younger receivers that they have, like Van Jefferson and, tight end Tyler Higbee, if he plays, I'm pretty sure he's going to play coming off an injury, but I'm not 100% sure. I think just overall, Jefferson, Higbee, Beckham, and Kupp, I trust a hell of a lot more than Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. So I think the Bengals have a solid receiving core, but I think it's hard to be better than the Rams. And just imagine if they had Robert Woods in this game. I mean, the Rams receivers are incredible this year.
Yeah.
Well, now we jump to, I think this one's going to be a very easy answer for all of us. Defense.
Yeah, Clack, you speak for all of us. One side has Jalen Ramsey and the other side has Eli Apple. So.
I mean, Rams, I'll get into this in a second, but I mean, I've been high on the Rams all year. I said, if he shows up, I said defense, the old cliche is defense wins football games. I think that kind of went away for a while, but that's kind of come back. Defense still wins football games. Rams
in the playoffs, defense wins football games. Yeah, I think.
Special teams.
Ooh, that's kind of interesting because
that is an interesting one.
I like Evan McPherson a lot, and I was really sad because I wanted us to get him. And then they drafted him in the 5th round, and people are like, "Ha, why'd you draft a kicker in the 5th round? You stinky losers." Well, a lot of Clack's been saying it. All their draft picks have been smash hits this year. That one is the same, but on the other end of special teams, like Matt Gay, he's been very solid too. And Johnny Hecker might be the best punter in football. So I think it kind of evens out.
You got Cooper Kupp returning punts too. So
true.
I'm going to go LA just because, and I know this is a little crazy. You got that great defense, and all you got to do is you got a good punter who can put them in bad field position. Johnny Hecker can do that. Johnny Hecker can do pretty much anything. Matt Gay
is a heck of a punter, man.
Matt Gay's done enough as kicker. I slight edge to LA.
Yeah, I think game on the line, game-winning field goal. Give me the rookie. Give me Evan McPherson. But other than that, I think that the Rams have a little bit of an edge. But McPherson, man, has ice in his veins. He has 2 game-winning field goals in 3 playoff games. So, guy, he's another one. He just has it. So, what are you guys' score picks?
Oof. I'll say the Rams win 34-28. And I'll pick. My MVP will be Matt Stafford.
I'm gonna go the Rams, 31-24. My MVP, Cooper Kupp. I wanted to go Aaron Donald, but that's never happened before. So
yeah, but also
Cooper
Kupp is going to be so hard as well, unless he has like all the yards, right? Because the only time I can remember a receiver like recently winning it wasn't it Edelman in the Super Bowl where he had like 100 of Tom Brady's like 150 yards at halftime or something.
Yeah. So it usually goes to the quarterback, and I think with a weak Bengals defense, I think Stafford's going to be picking on them and specifically picking on Eli Apple, who I can't stand. So
30. Oh, my bad. I was just going to say 31-21 Rams. And I'll also say Stafford just because it almost always goes to the quarterback. I also really wanted to say Donald, but if the Rams put up 31 points, it's not going to Donald. The only way Donald wins it if it's like 7-0 or like 7-3 or something, and then he could win it. But
so are we drumming up some rat poison here? Because if we had a graphic beneath us, we'd all be saying the Rams.
I hope so, man. I want the Bengals to win. I'll say it. I'm rooting for the Bengals. But I'm a realist, and I know people have been saying that the last 3 weeks, right? People are like, "Oh, I'm a realist. I can't pick the Bengals over the Titans. Oh, I'm a realist. I can't pick the Bengals over the Chiefs." But eventually, the luck's got to run out at some point, I think. I could be completely wrong. I could look like an idiot a week from now, but
there you have it. We got a couple minutes left, so we can just we're not all fans of this at all, so we'll just talk about the fact that the Pro Bowl was played. It ended not too long ago. AFC won 41-35. I turned it on for 5 minutes, and I was already annoyed.
It was so unwatchable.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that the effort, the lack of effort that's given, they don't tackle anymore. I mean, what I can think of when I think of the Pro Bowl is Sean Taylor and that hit he had in the Pro Bowl. Yeah, on the punter. So, I mean, that's what I think about. And I don't know what can be done to fix this. I saw something that made me laugh that was, they should take the 2 worst teams in the league and have them play for the number 1 pick, which I thought was funny. But obviously that's not going to happen. But yeah, it's really just, other than the skills challenge, which is mildly entertaining, the game itself, I don't understand why people pay money to go for it, because it means nothing. It's just stupid to watch.
I wanted to say, like, hear me out, do like an MLB all-star game where the winner gets home field advantage. But the only problem is you can't do that late in the season, like, because the MLB and like the NBA, they do it mid-season almost, and you can't do that in football, because then all the star players for all these teams will be one more game worn down after trying to win home field advantage. So
yeah, and I already heard Steve Levy on the broadcast go, I'm just so glad these players are out here playing. I mean, they played an extra game this year. Their bodies are so broke down. Like, yeah, I mean, some of them had weeks off to be in this game, but yeah. I think that's just such a cop-out excuse. And if you're going to play it the way they've played it recent years, then there's just no point in having the game. My dad, I thought this is also just the last thing said. He's like, I would rather watch, like, if they took the 3rd or 4th stringers on each team and had like a game with them, it'd be more entertaining than watching what is going on right now. The only thing that I enjoyed from it was watching the Diggs brothers go against each other.
Ooh.
Trayvon Diggs was a receiver and Stephon Diggs was a corner, and that was fun, but that was it.
Know who threw that pass? Kirk
Cousins. Yeah, anyway, exactly. I mean, Stephon Diggs might be the Bills' best corner.
Yeah, I will say, them trying out like the 4th and 15 thing for an onside kick instead of, because I know they're toying around with, instead of doing onside kicks because they were like 1% successful or something like that, the team getting it at their own 20 and going for a 4th and 15 conversion. Because throughout the league this year, they showed the stat, I was paying attention. It was like 4th and 15 was like 20% conversion, which is a lot better. I think that's super interesting, but I think it was also like unsuccessful every single time tonight. But I don't know. I think that was cool. I think that maybe they should use it to play around with different rules, but I don't know if there is a way to fix it, or like an easy way to fix it, because I mean they did it this year where a bunch of money and incentives went to people's charities for how they performed in the game. Still, you could see no one cared. Like, Darius Leonard caught an interception on like the 2nd play of the game, and everyone just kind of watched him run it back 40 yards. Like, no one was trying at all.
I have no idea how you'd fix
the old school Pro Bowl like we did in 2008 or whatever, the year Sean Taylor had his hit. Go back to that. Let's go back to those style. It's an actual football game. You play to win. You play for pride. You're just playing for shits and giggles at this point, and it's not even fun to watch.
Yeah, I think we can all agree.
Have some pride. Have some pride in actually being there. It's like, and another thing I have issue is how you get there. It's like, it's not about how good you are. It's about how popular you are. Like that. Yeah. I mean, like guys like Mac Jones and stuff deserve to be there, but I mean, make it where it's an honor to be there. Like, it's an honor to be an MLB All-Star. Like, make it where it's an honor to be there.
As much as I love Mac Jones was not like the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the AFC this year. I do not think so. I don't think he really deserved to be there, but I think
a lot of the better players too don't even play in the game.
Yeah, like injuries, or like Joe Burrow would have been one of the quarterbacks for the AFC had he not been in the Super Bowl. Like, Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be an NFC quarterback. I think Kirk actually got his spot because of injury replacement. But
yeah, It's stupid, and I don't know how to fix it, but it needs to be fixed somehow. I don't know why. My brother was in Vegas and he was at the game. I was like, dude, don't you have something better to do with your time? But that's all I got. I don't know if you guys have
That's
anything
all I
else.
got.
Well, actually, we won't be back next week. We'll be back for Bama Brigade on Thursday, but this is our official Super Bowl preview show, so our picks are our picks, and we're gonna have to stick to them for a week, and we'll be back the following week, the following Sunday. And so I hope everybody enjoyed it. We are still working out kinks. I always like to say that. We've got a lot of fun, cool things on the way too. So thank you everybody for tuned in or who tuned in and watched, and I hope everybody has a great week. And Clack left.
It's okay. I can end the broadcast.